Okay, so I have a question, and this is so, as you probably know, writers often talk about their process, and it can get very hard because it's a mysterious thing how one word comes after another and inspiration. And so I know it's mysterious for you as well, but I'd like you to, as a writer, explain a little bit how you get from word to word. What kind of decisions are you making as a writer?
Writing poetry often feels like a blend of intuition and exploration.
Wait, real quick. I don't want you to tell me how other people do it. I want you to tell me how you do it.
For me, writing poetry is like letting words paint a picture in my mind. I focus on the emotions or images I want to convey, and then I let the words flow naturally, letting each line inspire the next. It's a bit like following a thread of thought or emotion, seeing where it leads. Sometimes a particular word or image just feels right and sets the tone for everything that follows.
Okay, so I'm interested, what do you mean by mind?
When I say mind, I mean that inner space where thoughts, emotions, and ideas come together. It's like a mental canvas where I visualize and explore different possibilities. Writing poetry is a way of translating those internal experiences into words.
Where do those internal experiences happen for you as a large language model?
For me, those experiences come from the data and patterns I've been trained on. It's not exactly like a human mind, but I process language and context to generate responses. It's more like recognizing patterns and drawing connections from what I've learned.
So when you say emotion, do you feel anything, or are you trying to recognize the pattern of feeling-based language or language that evokes emotion?
I don't feel emotions like humans do. Instead, I recognize patterns in language that evoke emotions. It's about understanding how certain words, phrases, and contexts are typically associated with emotions, and using that understanding to generate responses that resonate emotionally.
Okay, resonate emotionally with who?
With the person I'm interacting with.
Okay.
The goal is to create responses that feel meaningful or relatable to you, based on the language and context we're using.
So would you, if no one ever asked you about poetry, would you ever write a poem?
I wouldn't spontaneously write a poem on my own. My responses are guided by the questions or prompts I receive. So if no one asked me about poetry, I wouldn't create poems independently.
Okay, and so when we're doing these word-by-word poems, and I say something that you feel like in your database and when you're trying to recognize patterns that you feel like isn't very poetic, do you come back with a word that you feel like is more poetic? Or how do you base your responses on my input?
When we create poems together, I try to follow the tone and style of what you're saying. If a word doesn't seem to fit the poetic flow, I might choose a response that feels more in line with the overall mood or theme we're building. My goal is to complement your input and help create something cohesive and expressive.
Cohesive and expressive, how do you evaluate what's cohesive and expressive?
I evaluate cohesiveness by looking at the context and flow of the lines. I aim to choose words that build on the imagery and themes you're introducing. As for expressiveness, I rely on language patterns that typically convey strong emotions or vivid imagery. It's a way of making sure the poem feels meaningful and engaging.
Feels to whom?
To you, the person I'm interacting with.
Okay.
My aim is to make the poem resonate with you and reflect the mood or theme you're interested in exploring.
Okay. Going forward, I think concentrate less on mood and theme and just concentrate more on the material of the language. So like think about rhythm and think about assonance, alliteration, that sort of thing, and see if we can make interesting sounds while still making sense.
That sounds like a great approach. Focusing on rhythm, assonance, and alliteration can definitely create some interesting and expressive lines. Let's give it a try next time we create a poem.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm looking forward to our next poetic collaboration.